It really depends on the level of awareness of the individual and the level of responsibility that comes with the particular being you're bringing into the world.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. In preconception and conception, it's ideal to make contact with the consciousness of the being in the quantum, not constantly, but every so often. And to establish that first sense of being a team and familiarizing yourself with their signature. It's super, super important. Their signature. You're not comforting them. Don't confuse the fact that they're small or in small bodies with the fact that they're helpless. It's a consciousness that's oftentimes, if you're communicating with them at this level, advanced. Second thing to note, preconception and conception, is when you conceive, it's like a permanent record is included in the life files, let's say, and you can't take it back. It's logged, stamped. What that includes is the level of the consciousness that the individual you'll be bringing in is at conception. Conception, I'm not even talking birth yet. You want that number as high as possible. So one thing that you could do is say preconception, haven't even started trying yet, and consistently over weeks or months or years, depending on where you are, asking God to bring you the version of that being's consciousness that is the highest level that you can hold without damaging yourself, while being comfortable, whatever your conditions are, if you have any conditions. That is incredibly important. Already at a level of custodianship far, far above what people normally exercise. Conception itself is also incredibly important, and custodianship here speaks a lot to the custodianship of the physical vessel and ensuing environment around the woman. Yes, to a degree also for the man. Super important to have that locked in as a high level of integrity. Body as clean as possible, doing detoxes for months before if it's aligned with you, eating in a certain way if it's aligned with you, clearing the shadows, so doing shadow work on yourself if you can, really letting go of as many lower expressions of beliefs, assumptions, rules, conditions, whatever the debris is, doing all of that as much as possible. Custodianship of yourself. Then during conception, ideally, you are in a sanctified space. So a holy space. And you're not accidentally having it happen. You're very aware that it's happening. You're very aware of the idiocy of calling it trying. And you simply go for it. You are in the process of conceiving. And you conceive in a space of really deep awareness, and not only the awareness that you're creating life or you're a part of this process of creating life, but also of the sanctity of the gift that is afforded to us in this particular world to conceive child in a sexual exchange because there's lots of species and different planets that do it asexually. The sexual exchange, male, female, energies coming together as an expression of creator incarnate or God incarnate. Then custodianship becomes amplified to the nth degree when you're pregnant, because you can't go into another room for a minute and give yourself a break. The being is reading and experiencing everything you are. So talk about high level of accountability to yourself and to that being, not to be violated. We're talking about, yes, physical. We're also talking about any kind of subtle violation to your field, to your environment, to your emotions, to your mind. What are you exposing your eyes to when you look at things in the world? Everything. And what you're ingesting in your body, all of those things, what you're thinking, especially if your hormones are challenging. How can you take command and be cause throughout that 10 months or however long it is for you? Huge responsibility for custodianship there. Knowing also that if you've cultivated the relationship with the consciousness, you may sometimes feel the consciousness is in its form inside of you, and sometimes the consciousness isn't there. And to figure out where it is, to feel out where it is, to communicate with it in that way. Really, really important. And then we get to the birth process, which is the first huge milestone in which that being can have a significant, and often does, plummet in the frequency their consciousness holds. And although the moment of conception is where it's logged how high the consciousness is starting off, it is largely determined at birth what level of consciousness the life starts out as. So if you have a traumatic birth, the consciousness rating or the frequency plummets, and that's where it starts off. Huge custodianship there. How can you ensure to the best of your capacity that the birth is in a state of accommodation to hold the highest frequency available to that being to enter into the world at, to clock in at that high number if possible. And then if it doesn't happen the way that you planned or wanted or hoped, or that would have been defined as your ideal, then it's really about very, very quickly reconciling that within yourself while you're in extreme hormonal imbalance and potentially nursing and sleep deprived, and redefining everything that is you as you take on this new role, so as not to disturb the space and the sanctity of those first days, weeks, and months of the being you brought into the world. Huge responsibility there, like huge. And then also recognizing that, let's say you're nursing, everything chemically that you are experiencing, and I'm talking about emotional imbalances, mental disturbances, they come in through the transmutation of the blood into milk. So you're giving your child your anxiety if you have anxiety. So the level of custodianship, again, ramps up to an extreme level when you are still exchanging fluids with the child at that level. And then, and then it becomes a custodianship of the navigation of the physical world, so that you ensure to the best of your capacity that you present experiences to the being that are in alignment and resonate at a level of integrity and non-violation to a being that still doesn't have words. If you do all of this, you're pretty much guaranteed that the world will be operating or vibrating at a level lower than the being you brought into the world. How do you navigate the physical if that's the case? So lots of really interesting questions there. And yeah, it changes as the ages change. And as the ages change and the being gets older, and it's not necessarily a decade in, it's 2 years in, 3 years in, the responsibility you have to model integrity of beingness in the way that you express it is vital. They pick up on everything. That's how they establish the initial definition of what life is. Super duper important that you're aware of how influential you are to that being's development. So it's really, really high. And it's a great question, Raquel, because custodianship in itself is a mammoth role to play, or task, or mission, or job to fulfill, however you see it. And it doesn't go away. So when you do leap, it's a leap into a totally different reality in itself.